Welcome in, everyone. My name is Patrick Jones. I am the host of the Patrick Jones Baseball Podcast. I'm also a hitting coach. Formerly, I was a hitting coach in the Baltimore Orioles organization. Now I work with hitters right here in my cage in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I also help players with college recruiting too, help guide them in the process and individualize it for them along the way too. Today, though, we have a podcast episode with Troy Merriman. We had Troy's dad on, Steve Merriman, not that long ago. And Troy isn't a pitching coach. Troy is a hitting coach at the University of Findlay, which is a Division II school in Ohio. Troy talks a little bit about what the differences are at the Division II level, how scholarships work, and he gets into kind of how they do things at the University of Findlay. So I like having on coaches who aren't just Power Five, D1. I think there's incredible coaches at every level, and Troy just fits that to a T. He's an outstanding coach, very good, eye for talent too. And I learned a lot just by interviewing him, and I'm hoping you guys do too. So if you haven't, please make sure to subscribe to the channel below. Trying to grow this thing. We're trying to impact more people, impact more players. So please subscribe it. If you get any value out of this podcast at all, please share it with somebody. That's the only thing I ask. So hope you enjoy this one with Troy Merriman. We now welcome on Troy Merriman. Troy, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Patrick. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
So you've been at the University of Findlay for a long time as a player and now as a coach too. Um, what's been something that stands out at University of Findlay that's you feel like is unique to any other school out there? Especially, let's just start like in the Division II world because you guys are Division II.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been at Finley for 8 years. Like you said, it's been a long time. I'd say one of the things, when I was being recruited to different schools, a lot of my visits and offers were in the Division II game. And so I got a chance to see some other Division II schools and how they operated. And I remember coming on my visit to Finley, and just the people were incredible. Just everybody was so welcoming. It felt like home away from home. And so I think like one of the things that makes Finley so special is the people that are here, not only just in the athletic department, the academic side, support staff around campus. It's been that way for all my 8 years here, and I've loved every second of it. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things, especially at small schools, to attract quality players is you got to have the right people in place, and that's set aside again from just our coaching staff, which obviously they spend a lot of time with us, but they spend just as much time in the academic side. They spend a lot of time with our administrators, and so as long as you've got a good group of people, it works. And so that's one of the things I think at Philly that makes it special is the people. We've got a great little campus, and so that's obviously a draw as well. But yeah, love the people here, very welcoming, and definitely is a good place and home away from home for a lot of guys. So
How does Division II scholarships work? Because in Division I, it's 11.7, and I believe the lowest you can offer someone is 25%. You can't go any lower than that. And you can do 100 if you want to, but it's all
sure.
percentage based.
Yep.
What's it like? What's the situation like at the Division II level when it comes to scholarships?
Yeah, scholarships are are unique in the Division II level, to say the least. So fully funded Division II schools are 9 scholarships. So like 2.5 or 2.7 less than Division I. So we're working with a little bit less as that's concerned. A lot of schools aren't fully funded either, and so um, partial scholarships are you know the only scholarships that most Division II schools are offering. I know for us in the way that we operate, we have a range. So we have like a small scholarship to a big scholarship, and guys can fall somewhere in that range. There's no limit on what we can offer, so we can go as low as $1,000 if we want to. Um, and so that makes it good for us, because if there's a kid that you know we want to get, we can throw him a little bit of money if he's a walk on other places, just to say he's on scholarship. If we see a higher end guy, we'll go higher end in our range. So it's just it's kind of trying to figure that out. And obviously the financial aid part with academics is huge here at Finley, and I know at a lot of Division II schools. So if you've got good grades, that helps take some money off of that, and then we can kind of give an offer based off of, how much they're getting off academically. But yeah, it's tricky sometimes, when we're kind of going through those numbers because we have a limited amount of scholarships, and so we want to maximize the money that we have for players that are coming in, and also hopefully if there's some guys on our current roster that need to be bumped up based on performance, if they were a small scholarship guy and then got into a starting role, whatever it might be, we like to reward those guys, so to say. And so that's pretty much the way it works for the most part. But it's it's tricky, but we've got a pretty good system going on right now. And usually the guys that we offer scholarship to, at least on the bigger end, are guys that we feel can have an immediate type impact in our program potentially as a freshman, and so on like that. So that's kind of how it works for us.
So if you give someone, like, let's say $10,000, can they take that $10,000 and spend it on tuition, or can they do it on room and board? Like, is it up to them how they spend it at the school?
Yeah, so I mean, it just like it's all thrown into their financial aid package. So when they get their money from financial aid, or what they're getting through academics, grants, things like that, then our money stacks on top of that. So then it pretty much just takes like the bottom line down a little bit. And so it's can be used. It's going to be used however the school allots it, to be. And so at the end of the day or start of the semester, each guy's this is how much money you owe for this semester. And so it just kind of all gets lumped in together. So there's not really like a certain place that it goes, or I don't necessarily think guys get to choose how the money's allocated. But yeah, the number is going to get smaller and smaller as the scholarship increases, obviously. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, the scholarships in, Division 1, Division 2. I mean, there's not really like one place that people can go, and parents and kids that can go, that like it says all this
right.
information in a
No, one hundred
clear,
percent.
like I've even called the NCAA before about certain questions, and everything is so vague. Even just a lot of the rules. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind
Right.
of like
Yeah.
they wait for you to break a rule, and then they're all over you. It's like, well, if you just would have told me to begin with, I maybe would have
Sure.
known what's going on.
Right. And I think like, and on that same side, like I think a lot of the schools, they kind of can choose how they want to do it with scholarships. And obviously, the amount of scholarships you have is based off of the support you're getting from the school. And so I think that's probably why the NCAA is just kind of like, hey, we're gonna we're gonna leave it up to the schools to kind of do what they want with it and how it fits into their financial aid system. And so I think ours is pretty common with the rest of our conference as far as stacking scholarships on academic money and things like that. There's quite a few schools in our conference that do that, and that helps a lot because if you give a baseball scholarship and it doesn't stack, it's absorbing all of that money that they're getting, and so you either have to offer a scholarship as much as their academic package, because if you don't, then that money just gets absorbed because you can't stack. But that's not how it is at Finley. We can stack it, combine it. Some schools can't, and
So
so
when you say stack it, you mean combine their academic and athletic.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. And so there's some schools I know. I don't know any particular. I know that there's a few that don't have the stackable money, and so that makes it that makes it trickier, on them, because if a kid's getting, let's say, $12,000, if they want to offer a scholarship, it's got to be at least $12,000 or more. Because if you offer less, then you're not stacking it, so they're only getting the $8,000 scholarship, and they're losing out on $4,000 that they could have got if you didn't offer scholarship. So thankfully at Finley we can stack, so that makes the packages seem a lot bigger, as far as the money you're getting potentially 15,000 from academics, maybe 8 to 10,000 from us. That's a pretty hefty scholarship on top of some other grants or whatever, and makes the cost a lot more competitive in our conference. So
Troy, I remember before we started recording this, you were talking about, you guys had a new head coach this past year, and last
mhm.
summer you did all the recruiting by yourself. What'd you learn from doing the recruiting outside of probably like the crazy tournaments and travel and everything? I mean, what takeaways did you have from watching and evaluating players and just kind of the whole 9 yards?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I mean, thankfully, I grew up around the game. So my dad's been a coach my entire life. So I've always been at games. I've watched games. I've known how to, recruit, what are the etiquette, things like that. I would say probably the thing I learned most is, one, you know, following. Sometimes it's easier to follow players. So like finding, like I was trying to last summer be like, okay, these are some guys that I've seen video on or guys that I know I would like to see. So I'm going to find those teams and then kind of follow those guys, and that worked for me just because there wasn't two of us out there, and so I felt like I needed to be more specific with who I was watching. I didn't want to go to games where I wasn't going to be able to see somebody that I could recruit because it was just me, and I didn't want to waste any of my time and resources. So that's what I did last summer. Now this summer we've got me and then our other two coaches, Brian Mikowski and Coach Palm as well. So there's three of us that are on the road now. So now I feel like we are able to target players, but we're also able to see teams that we want to see as well. And so I don't necessarily feel as bad. I won't feel as bad this summer if I see a game that there's not a recruitable player because I'm like, okay, I know there's two other guys that are out there as well, and so that's probably one of the things. I'd say the other thing I learned is just like using my resources as far as other coaches. So I felt like I networked and met a lot of guys last summer, talked to them, asked them questions, kind of what do they do, um, and really like one of the best ways to learn is by doing it, right, making mistakes. And so I felt like last summer probably could have done some things differently as far as, and some of it probably was more organizational things. So like if I went to a tournament and I saw whatever 18 games over the course of 3 days, so that was at a few different places. I didn't feel like last summer I did a good job of streamlining all of that information on the players that I was watching. So like I had just had a million papers, and I had a bunch of highlights and notes, but I didn't do as good of a job last summer as getting that in one place where I could say, okay, I've seen this guy, I've seen him here. This is a potential scholarship guy. Just kind of going through that whole process. I didn't that, and that was probably because I was by myself. I didn't have to share the information with anyone else. Now with the three of us, we have to share. We share each week, in our recruiting meeting after the weekend. We say, hey, these are who guys that we saw, we liked. These are the teams that we saw, need to see again, or we'd like to see this guy throw. Um, whatever it might be. So I'm really fortunate to have had the experience last summer of doing it on my own because I think it helped prepare me for now having more help on the recruiting side um, and all that. So it was tricky at times. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I love the recruiting part of the game. It's one of my favorite parts of coaching. I really enjoy interacting with the high school guys and their families, and it's a fun experience for me. So I've really enjoyed the recruiting part of it, and I love watching baseball. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. What you
Yeah.
mentioned there, recruitable player. In your eyes, what is that? What does recruitable player mean?
Yeah, I guess I'm at more maybe like scholarship type player.
Yeah,
But even, like in when you and I had talked last week, you had asked me what are some of the differences between Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. And,
yeah,
and like I said, it's not a huge jump. I mean, there are some guys that we recruit that we feel like could potentially be, a Division 1 type player. They've got the tools, maybe they just haven't put it together, not consistent. Um, so I guess for us in our recruiting, like we're obviously trying to find scholarship players. If there are guys that we feel like maybe you know haven't developed quite yet, but they have a few tools that we really like, we think we could develop those. That fall into our recruitable category. Could be a walk on for us, or things like that. And so the recruitable players go from scholarship guys to walk on guys that, and again that's kind of where we feel that they're at present day. So if there's a guy who we feel like we're gonna have to offer $8,000 to get, he's a high end scholarship guy. If there's a guy who we're like, man, he's quick, he can run, just he hasn't put the bat with it yet, or he's really great defensively, needs to work on the stick. Might be a walk on type player for us, but again, anybody that we recruit into the program, um, our goal is to develop them into guys that hopefully can help us down the road. And so, that would kind of be what falls into our recruitable player, type guys. But obviously, we have to bring in a certain number of guys, or we've got to have a certain number of guys on our roster, and so some of that goes into play as well with the walk-ons and scholarship guys that we feel like you know can help our team in some way. So
how many guys can you have on a roster?
at Finley, we have to have 42. We have to at least have 42 guys on the roster. We typically carry somewhere between 45 and 50, just depending on the year and the recruiting class and what we've lost the year before. We like having a little bit higher than our number because it allows us to inter squad quite a bit. So that's one thing we do in the fall a lot is we inter squad at least 3 times a week, even if it's just a quick little 3 inning inter squad where we've got a couple of arms that need to throw an inning apiece. And then on the weekends we play a little bit more extended games as well. So having a little bit bigger roster like that allows us to field pretty much 2 full teams with pitching staff. And last year, which I really enjoyed, and that I assume we'll do again this fall, but each week our coaching staff drafted players, and so there were like the teams were different each week, and so guys were playing with different guys, which I think is important. You don't want to stick with just all one team for the whole fall. You want to play with other guys, see how other guys do things. That helps with communication as well. When you're in the infield and you've got different middle guys, communication has to be different if it's a different player. And so that's one reason why we like to have a little bit bigger roster, so we can do those things and have that flexibility in the fall to play as much as we can based off of the amount of pitchers that we have. So
What's a typical day for you like during fall ball?
so we typically start practice about 3:30 p.m. Usually we'll start early work an hour before. So early work for us is just if guys aren't in class and they want to come out and get some extra reps on the infield, they want to get some extra swings, um, whatever it might be, take some extra time to stretch. So guys kind of can use that early work period however they want. It's not a required part of our practice, just a way for guys to get some extra things outside of practice. So we have that, and then we'll usually start about 3:30. Depending on the day, if it's not a inter squad day, we'll probably do some team defense work, do a lot of base running stuff, especially in the fall. It's a big thing for us. We implemented some new things with our base running, which was exciting. So do a lot of reps with that. Take BP. We do a lot of coach pitch like sim game scrimmages. So coach will throw. We've got 2 teams, so guys are running on and off the field, running bases. Outfielders have to throw. Infielders have to make good throws, quick feed, things like that with runners involved. So we do a lot of that, throughout the fall and different days. Again, just depending on what it is. But a lot of our practice is geared around competition, of course. But if it's an inter squad day, everything's going to kind of be under that umbrella. So if we're going to inter squad that day, we may take BP like we would for a game, may take a quick IO, or just do some ground ball, fly ball stuff to get guys ready. So we're going to try to simulate the game as much as possible, even on those inter squad days. And like I said, we're doing that about 3 times a week. So usually we were doing one day during the week, and then the weekend we'd go both either Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, just depending on weather. So, and then obviously as the fall progresses, pitch counts rise. Obviously the guys start, somewhere around the 20, 30 range. Guys are going to be prepped for a starter role. They may get up to, 60, 70 by the end of the fall. And so then that will extend the amount of days that we play. So that's one of the things that we did last year that I liked a lot. I thought that prepared our guys very well for the spring and competition. Is a huge part of what we do.
How do you go about individualizing? And this is like such a huge word. I need to think of a better word than just individualize. But how do you go about like helping players maybe develop, like hitters develop within that team setting where, obviously Troy, you're only one guy. You got all these guys out here. You only have so much time because they have classes and things like that, and you have recruiting and all this other stuff going on. So how do you still help them continue to develop? And obviously the game will do that too, but
Mhm.
is there a system that you kind of have to make sure everyone gets some time and knows what they need to work on?
It's a really good question, and honestly, if anybody has an answer to that, I'd love to know because it is very very tricky, especially when we're in the midst of the fall and we're trying to implement some team defense stuff, and we've got to go quick. We're trying to keep the pace fast and slow down when we're teaching, but when it's drill work, we want guys to be fast paced as they would in the game. Um, so it is tricky. It really is. That's one of the things that when we bring recruits on campus, I always talk to them about what we do as far as coaching, like how are we going to coach you when you get here. And I think for us that one of the things that we do that works really well for us is we do a lot of individual like training periods. And so at least once or twice a week, we're going to go away from the team practice and do individual work, either based off skill position. Um, Maybe we'll split, groups of different hitters. If it's a hitting day, if it's a defense day, we may have all infielders come at one time, outfielders, catchers. And we feel like that's a really, really good way for us to coach guys on a smaller scale, right? So instead of having three coaches and 47 players, we've got one coach and four players or one coach and five players. And so we're able to kind of reach them a little bit better in that way. Also, the early work that we have before practice is really great for, one-on-one type work. So if the guys in the infield needs to work on stuff, we can watch, we can see what they're doing. We can say, hey, this is what you're doing. I'd say probably the thing, at least on the hitting side, that works for us, kind of trying to individualize, like you said, during team practice, is video. So we're going to try to get video as much as we can. And again, we're obviously limited because there's three of us and pitching coach is working with, he's doing side pens. One of us is throwing BP. One of us might be, out in the outfield talking to guys, getting reads, or talking to infielders, doing double plays. So we invested in an iPad and tripod this last year. So there are times we can set up a tripod, just let it run while guys hit so we can see stuff. And so that's probably the easiest way, for a small school with a small staff to maximize the time is just set something up, let it run, and then we can go through and cut stuff, look at stuff. Because there are some times where if I'm throwing or Coach Tom's throwing and one of us is doing something else, it's hard for us even to like watch each guy hit, depending on like if I'm hitting fungos to the infielders, and he's throwing BP, our pitching coach is doing side pens. Like it's not always like I'm gonna look at certain like when guys are hitting, I'm gonna see a couple swings, but I'm not gonna watch. There's little time that I'm watching, a full round from the side where I can see what guys are doing. So that's why the video helps us with that because it's sitting there and getting stuff that I can't, see each second of the guy's round during batting practice, whatever it might be. So the video is good, and that's probably the easiest way for us to be able to get a one-on-one type coaching with the guys. But most of those conversations again are going to happen that night or the next day, right? So it's not even on site, which sometimes is good. It allows the guy to watch the video, see what they see, and then I get to hear their input and then give mine, and we can go back and forth that way. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the easiest thing for us to be able to do to maximize our staff and resources.
Troy, it's funny when I when I hear not just coaches, but I hear of parents and players and everybody, even older players, talk about the importance of the mental side of the game, right, and training that. And it's fascinating to me because it's one thing you really just can't quantify. There's so many things we can measure in baseball, but we can't really
Mm-hmm.
quantify how good someone's mental game is. I guess you could see it from some people with how they deal with failure, but
Sure.
how do you go about helping these guys deal with that side of the game? And this is where I've always been like connected to or attracted to older coaches in the sense of they usually have some good wisdom when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to the mental because they've been doing it for so long. What stuff do you guys do, or what stuff do you like to do, having been a player yourself and now coach too, to help players with that side of the game?
Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of the job is I'm a huge relationship guy. I really enjoy building relationships. And so I think for us, um, and the thing that works for our guys is obviously when we're recruiting them, we're building relationship with them. As they commit, sign, come to campus, that relationship grows as we see them, every day for the most part. And so I think one of the things, that's really important on that side of it is, creating a culture of, vulnerability within the program. So guys feel comfortable to come talk to me if something's going on, or Coach Palm in the same way. Um, and that's something that you have to establish through, communication, and more so than just, on the baseball side, man. I try to at least talk to a few guys before practice. Hey, how's your day? How are classes? How's family? How's everybody doing? How are you doing? Because a lot of guys, obviously, you're away from home for the first time in your life. Some guys a little bit farther away from home than others, and so um, I think just like talking with the players. Honestly, I mean, as vague as that sounds, I don't necessarily, I'm not a counselor, so I'm not a professional in in the mental health side of, the of life. But, I think that the guys understand that, we care about them more than just what they bring to our program on the baseball field, right? We care about who they are as a person. We care about their education, and we want to pour into those guys, all those different buckets. And so they don't just feel like, our love for them is based off of how they perform on the field. Because if that's the case and they have a bad day, then they think that we don't like them anymore, right? That's just kind of, the way it works for a lot of guys that put their value and worth in their performance. And so we try to talk with our guys more than just, in a baseball setting. Like, I tell everybody my office door is open. Come see me anytime I'm in here. Coach Palm's the exact same way. So that helps with the players feeling comfortable to come and talk to us if there is an issue. And I felt like this last year we had more guys come and do that than any other year before. And I think that's just kind of the culture that we're trying to promote and build, is that, if something's going on, it's okay to talk. I mean, you don't have to, you don't have to be a tough guy. You're not, just because you're struggling with something doesn't mean that you're, that there's something wrong with you. Everybody
Right.
goes through those times. And so it's just like opening that dialogue, I think is the biggest thing, because guys have to trust you too. I mean, if they don't trust you, then they're not going to come and talk to you. And so I think that just trying to build that level of trust through relationships, and caring about them more than just what they bring to our baseball program, specifically on the baseball field. As long as they know that we're going to pour into them in different avenues of life, I feel like that's been a good thing. But I mean, you also do have to check up on guys too, because there are some guys that put on the face at practice that everything's cool, and then you hear from other guys that something might be going on. And so um, trying to just talk with every guy at some point throughout a 2-day period, even if it's just a quick back and forth, just to see if I can get a gauge on where they're at, how they're doing, how school going, any big tests coming up that might go into their stress level and their um in their head. And so um yeah, we try and do that a little bit. Um, and that's one of the things I really enjoy the most about the coaching part, is just building relationships with players. And so that's seemed to has been good the last few years, and we'll obviously continue to do that for every guy that we bring in here.
Being vulnerable is, oh my, it's so important. I'm glad you brought up a lot of really good points there, and I see that from time to time too, where it's like guys, they put on that tough guy look that everything's okay, and
Yeah,
if you think about it, really the tough guy is the guy who's vulnerable, and is the
sure.
guy who's be like, hey, like right now I'm struggling a little bit, like
Yeah,
we all do, I mean,
right.
we're as human beings. I mean, it's literally impossible for us to go through life and not have some struggles. So it's good
Yeah,
to open up sometimes and talk about it. And I think the other thing that you don't hear people talk about is you talked a little about building relationships with guys and guys coming in and talking to you. There's that transition from living at home to now going to school somewhere else and being in a completely new environment and all these things too. And for some kids make that transition smoother than others,
yeah,
being away from home for the first time. So I think that there's so many things going on, and as they're transitioning, that affects their play on the field. It affects them in the classroom. So I mean, I think that's something that if you can help them get comfortable, and like you mentioned there, trust. I mean, it all comes down to that at the end of the day.
right. Oh, for sure. Yeah, 100%. No, you hit on all those exactly right. And then throw in the social media part too, right? So there's all that, plus social media now is so big, especially in this younger generation. The posts and the likes and the gratification they get from that, the comparison that they have to other guys. And so yeah, they've got a lot. There's a lot of things that are going into young guys' bubbles now, right? And so it's just trying to navigate that for us, and just have those conversations, talk with them, let them know that we love them and care for them more than the baseball part. And we've seen a lot of guys, and we've helped a lot of guys too, like through things which maybe you don't get if you don't have conversations with them, or you don't let them know that your door's open whenever, right? And so it's just trying to be conscious of that stuff. And it's obviously really important, right? I mean, it's incredibly important, and like you said, it does dictate their everyday life. It dictates their performance. And so it's something that we as a coaching staff and coaches just in general have to be extremely aware of. when you're bringing guys in, and obviously the guys that you already have on your own team. So
You mentioned social media there. How often do you utilize social media for recruits or transfers and just kind of the everything out there when it comes to what it can do? I mean, there's pros and cons to it, of course, but
sure.
how do you utilize it?
Short answer: every day. We use it every day.
Yeah. I keep hearing
We're
that from everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unbelievable tool. I mean, just to like even just from last weekend. I mean, I was at Kent State watching, I think I saw 6 games in 2 days. And then I was in a wedding on Saturday, so I couldn't be there on Saturday. But there's companies that are taking videos of guys and posting them. There's like, PBRs everywhere posting stuff on Twitter. Their PBR is incredible. I mean, they're incredibly active. They were at the state tournament taking all these videos. Like, they're always, pushing the player. And so it's the social media is an unbelievable tool, and we utilize it a lot. I mean, both Coach Palm and I are active on Twitter. And so, we see videos of guys, we follow guys that we like, we want to see video. Obviously PBR is really important, for us to target players, and to see some maybe some measurables that we'd like to see. But yeah, we utilize it a lot. I mean, the big thing for us obviously is to see guys in person. Want to see them play in a game. That's that will never change. I mean, we're never going to just strictly recruit from our phone. But it does help with, man. Oh, I saw this video of this guy. Did you see this? What do you think? I can send it to him. He can send it to me. We can look. We're like, oh, we like that. Let's go see him in a game.
Right.
So it's not all that we use. I mean, we utilize it every day, but we're not relying strictly on video that we a 30-second clip we found on Twitter, right? Or we're not living and dying by anything on that end. Our biggest thing is we need to see them first. So that's why we utilize it for finding players, utilize it for finding teams, whatever it might be, communicating, and then we go on to the field and see them play, and that's a huge part of our level to be able to see them, in game play. That's big. So
So it's kind of just like a resume, right? That
yeah,
video where it gets you interested. You're
yeah,
not going to get the job by just looking at your resume, but
right,
you might get an interview, right? Where you go
sure,
watch them play. Now,
100%.
what goes into or what do you think about kids tagging you on posts?
Um,
Are you in
I
on
mean,
that?
it doesn't bother me as much. It might bother me a little bit, like when they tag like Ohio State, Kent State, and
Like
then
every
Finley,
school
and
in
I'm like,
Ohio?
okay, like what I mean, what are we doing here? Like, we're not. If you're getting looks by those schools, probably not gonna tag us. And so, but again, I don't care, because I like to sit like I appreciate guys like trying to get market themselves. I think that's a really big part of recruiting, right? Like, you got to stand out. You got to, if you go to a showcase with 70 guys, how are you going to be remembered? Are you going to do something that's different? Are you going to wear something that's different? And so I think social media is kind of the same thing. You're just trying to get attention. You want somebody to see this video. And I mean, anytime I get tagged in something, I'm going to look at it for sure. Um, but yeah, that doesn't bother me as much. I know some coaches are like, oh, don't do that, but and I don't care. I appreciate the player, trying to, get his name out there, try to get some eyes on the video, and so I respect that completely, and don't think that there's nothing wrong with doing it. It's just maybe like, you know, don't tag every school in Ohio, right? Or don't tag like Vanderbilt baseball and then Finley, like, it's like let's be strategic with who you want to see your stuff. And I think that's a huge part with recruiting right now. Is and just as an example, I got an email from a player not too long ago and said, "Hey, coach, would love for you to come out and see me play. Here's my summer schedule," and every one of their tournaments is in Tennessee or Georgia or Florida. Like, like, we're not going to recruit down there, because we're going to recruit the guys in this region that we can have a chance to keep here, right? Like, we're not going to go compete with schools down south, even just if there's 2 schools down there. So I think that you have to be really conscious of that as a, in the recruiting process for the players, to like, who am I trying to market myself to, right? Like, that goes back to don't tag Vanderbilt, Wake Forest and Finley, right? Like, if you want to market yourself to small college schools in Ohio, then market yourself to small schools in Ohio. Don't don't do you don't have you can't have both sides of it. So that's probably the only thing that I would say that I'm like, sometimes it's like, maybe let's cut back on that a little bit. But
If
Other
it's
than
just
that,
one
I've
or
got
two,
no
if it's
problem.
like you and maybe one other school would be
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't care if it's like they do us, Tiffin, a school in our conference, or like I don't care about any of that. Like, hey, cool. Let yourself, be seen by as many coaches as you can. Um, it's just like, hey, if you feel like you're a small college player, then market yourself accordingly, right? Everybody wants to, you know, everybody's hanging on to Division One, which is it's totally fine. I think I should totally have those goals. I had those goals as a player as well. It's what helps drive you and to make you better. But at some point, you got to say, okay, like these are schools I've heard from. These are the schools that I know are interested. Those are the schools that I want to market myself, or schools like that I want to market myself to. Um, and kind of go from there. So I'd say that that's probably the one thing. But yeah, I've got no problem with it overall.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is, I mean, even if you're not getting recruited by Division 1 schools and maybe you are more of a small school player right now, it doesn't
Right.
mean that you can't play at the Division 1 level. I mean, hell, Eddie K last year when I was with the Orioles, we drafted him out of Division 2 school and he's tearing it up. He's in high A right now in professional
Yeah.
baseball. So I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily matter. Part of it is timing, right? Of maybe when you're being seen or when you develop. There's so many things that go into it, but just because you're not getting looks from Division 1 player, I think it was Coach Corbin. I heard him say a couple years ago, there's a ton of players Division 1 who should be playing Division 3, and a ton of players Division 3 who could easily be playing Division 1. And so
Yep.
it's the same thing with D2 and D3, where it's, I mean, it's just when do you guys start looking at players specifically Division 2 level? I assume it's not as early as you know some of these other schools.
Definitely not that early. I would say for us, this is like the summer going into their senior year is the big time for Division 2, Division 3 schools to recruit. Um, we did actually target, a few guys that we had seen the summer before or at a showcase, like after the first of the year. So after the first of the year of their junior year, we brought in 8 recruits to campus to visit. Um, and obviously, like knowing that we were going to want to see them again, but just to have started that recruiting process a little bit earlier. That's the earliest since I've been a coach. Just finished my 4th year. That's the earliest that we've ever recruited for that next upcoming senior class was in January, bringing in those 8 guys. So that's probably the thing we'll continue to do. We actually did end up signing a guy in March, so it did work. We got a good pitcher that we feel like is going to be pretty good. And it was in March of his junior year. That's the earliest that we've ever signed. And so the majority of Division 2 schools maybe are going to sign a couple guys, before the summer of their senior year. But most of the work is going to come from the summer, and then a lot of guys will start taking their visits in the fall, and kind of go from there. And so if they're and we actually had, I mean, we just signed another kid yesterday for the 22 class. We've signed like 4 or 5 kids since the first of the year, um, like just for this 22 class. So like we even had guys who were kind of late bloomers, right? So we're always looking for that too, guys that kind of maybe went under the radar through the summer, through the fall, maybe had a big jump in the winter, and so we've signed a couple kids like that we were pretty excited about, that maybe weren't guys last summer, but they got bigger, they got stronger, they had to jump somewhere, and then they become a guy that we want to go after. And so that happens for us. Now we're officially done with the 22 class, and setting our sights on 23. But we'll recruit the class pretty much up until June of that year, even for guys that would come that following fall. But yeah, again, it just depends on the players and stuff. And obviously, like you had said with Coach Corbin saying guys can play, Division 1 guys should be Division 3 and vice versa. A lot of that, at least in the last couple of years, has been because of COVID, right? I mean, there's like rosters are jammed. There's guys that are getting their COVID year coming back. So that we've seen, I think that's helped the Division 2, Division 3 level to get really quality players, because you know schools in the MAC, for instance, for us, just because it's local. Guy that might be able to fit into that conference or fit into a school in the MAC, maybe they can't take them because they've got, they're full. They've got all their guys coming back. They don't have any scholarships to give, and so maybe we can go get a guy like that. So I think COVID has been a really big impact on rosters, on where guys fit, and probably benefits the small school, Division 2, Division 3 type school more so than anybody, just because the quality of players that might fall because of the jammed rosters.
Do you guys utilize the transfer portal at all?
We have not gotten into it. We've got one kid that transferred here last year. He played in the summer with one of our guys, and he fit a need that we had in the outfield. But yeah, we're pretty committed to bringing in high school players and developing high school players. That's one of our things that we want to do, and that's what we tell the high school guys that we bring in, because I mean, the recruits, they're not stupid. I mean, they know the transfer portal. They know that a lot of schools are plucking guys from that, which is totally fine. But they've got, like, pretty much every recruit that we've had in the last year has asked us about the transfer portal, right? They're like, do you guys get into the transfer portal? Do you recruit this? Do you recruit that? And we tell them no, because we want guys to feel comfortable that they're going to develop and have a chance to play here, not be replaced by somebody from another school that we're going to bring in to play in that spot. We want guys to be able to want and know that if I go to Finley, I'm gonna get developed, and I'm gonna have a chance to fight for the position that I'm at, right? And so we're committed to bringing in and developing high school guys, and we'll probably stay that way for the time being.
If I'm going to play devil's advocate, if you're like, let's just say, because I've heard this from other college coaches, let's say, I could go and get a high school kid who's unproven, or I could go and get a kid who has, had the college experience. He knows the routine. He knows what to expect. He's had some, maybe a little bit of success at the college level,
Yeah.
and I could get him and bring him in right away. Why wouldn't I bring in the guy who's already had some experience?
Yeah, no, I don't knock any school for using it. I think it's an incredible tool. It's just not something that within our recruiting that we're willing or want to do at this point. And so it has nothing to do with you know not liking the transport. I think the transport is great. I think it's good for guys to be able to find a fit that's good for them. Um, we just want to bring in high school guys and develop those guys, and that's just kind of our style. That's our mo. That's what we want to do. And so that's why we do what we do. I think that transfer portal is an awesome resource. I've seen it work for a lot of schools, right? I mean, there's a lot of schools that use it and utilize it well and are smart with it, and bring in the right guys. And so it can work for sure. Just not something at this point that we're willing to get into right now. But that's not to say it wouldn't happen down the road, or it couldn't happen in certain spots where, like you said, if we're looking at filling an arm in our pitching staff, maybe it is better to go and get a transfer guy, because he can be a potential plug in and pitch, versus the high school guy that hasn't done it at the college level yet. And so yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to it. No question about it. No question about it. It's
It's
definitely a good
crazy how
resource.
many. I forget. I think there's 12 or 1,300 players in that thing right now.
I know, I know, I know. It is crazy. It
I
is
mean, do you
crazy.
think that there's that many players who, when they went to college and then the experience they got was so dramatically different than what they anticipated, that they're like, I got to get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens in some ways. I was just talking to somebody this weekend about the landscape of travel baseball right now, and I think that stems into the college game as well. So a lot of guys who are playing on a travel team, maybe they're not playing the position they want. Maybe they didn't get enough at bats. They're just going to go to another travel team, right? And that's kind of like how society is right now. If you're not getting what you want, we're gonna go somewhere else to get what I want, right? And so I think there obviously are some cases where guys are in a situation that was not what they were told. Maybe there was something that happened, and transfers to a new school that fits what they want. I think that's great. I think that honestly, a lot of the the transfers are because guys are unhappy. They think they should be playing. They want to play more. They don't like something or whatever, and so they're just going to jump ship and go somewhere else, just like they did in 15U travel ball to
Right.
16U, right? Like, there are some guys who are playing for 3 or 4 different travel programs in the course of 6 years. Where when I was growing up, I played on the same travel team from 10U to 18U, and a lot of the guys that I played with were in that same boat. And so I think that that probably has, a little bit of effect on it too. Just the idea that if you don't get what you want, just go somewhere else instead of like sticking your nose and fighting for it, working hard, and trying to get it at the place that you started at. But like I said, there are some cases where guys need a change of scenery, and that's completely okay and up to them. And they should do that if that fits for them. But we want guys, to fight for what they want and to continue to work and try to get better to get the spot and get the job that they want. So instead of jumping ship and getting it somewhere else. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't help the culture of the team for sure. You guys,
right.
if you got guys jumping left and right. It's funny you mentioned that because I had a couple of new high school kids this past week, and we were talking in the cage, and they told me that they had been with the same organization, travel organization, for 5 years, and it dawned on me. I was like, wow, like that's rare, 'cause I very rarely hear that anymore. That
Hmm.
you've been to get someone has been with the same organization for 4 or 5 years. Because like you said, it's kind of just this, it's like a norm now. You
Right.
just jump from team to team, and I don't know, I don't even think twice about it anymore.
Right, and honestly, we do look at that stuff,
Oh,
like,
do
in our
you?
recruiting. I mean, we wanna see, what guys have done, where they've been, who they've played with, um, and if they did leave a team, I mean, we'll ask them. Well, we've asked plenty of recruits, like, "Hey, why'd you leave this organization?" May try to talk to a high school coach, or something like that that could get some information. But when you have a limited amount of scholarships, like we have in a lot of schools in our conference have, you can't miss on those guys, right? And so, if they've played on 3 different summer teams in 5 years, I want to know why. I mean, were you treated poorly? Was there something that happened that made you leave, or did you just leave because you didn't like the situation, didn't like the position you were playing, or the position that coach felt like was best for you or that team? And so we honestly do look at that. I think that's a really big part because that again is gonna, you know, are they gonna do that when they get here? Are they gonna, if they don't like something or not playing, are you gonna leave? Um, and so we want to try to find guys that have planted roots on a team or program, and we feel like those guys fit our culture best and are going to be the ones who stick it out maybe when things aren't going their way. So we do look at it a little bit, yeah, for sure.
That's good stuff. I'm glad you mentioned that for the players and parents who are going to be listening to this.
Yeah,
Troy, last question I have for you.
yeah.
Why would someone want to come play University of Findlay?
Wow, it's a really good question. Um, I think that you guys would want to come play at the University of Finland because they know that they're going to get coached. We are very involved in the coaching part. We all three of us love to do it. We're high energy guys. Um, so you're going to come here and get coached, and you're going to get better. But kind of like what we talked about earlier, like you're going to have a group of guys that care about you, more than just on the baseball side. We want to get to know you. We want to, grow relationships over a course of 4 or 5 years with you. Pour into you in other avenues. And so, that's something that I think is really important to, recruits as you're going into a situation. You want to obviously want to be coached and you want to get better. But I think you want to be able to have good relationships with, your coaching staff. Obviously, you want to have good relationships with the other guys on the team, because that just helps your experience. But guys would want to come to, and I think honestly that's why we've got a really good recruiting class coming in this 22 class, and that's kind of been one of the things that a lot of them have said, throughout this process, is that they've enjoyed getting to know us and are looking forward to getting, to know us more. They like the culture. They know that they're going to be coached and pushed, which is a big part of what we do kind of in a practice setting. But um, ultimately, you're going to come to a program that everybody on the team, every member of our staff cares about you as a person, and so and cares about you as a student and player as well. So that's kind of the three main areas that we're looking at in recruiting. Being a good person, being a good student, and being a good baseball player, and we won't sacrifice any of those things for another. So if a guy is incredibly talented and not a good person or not a good student, that's not somebody that we want to have around. We want to build a program that is rooted in those three things, and obviously they're going to see that from how we communicate with them, and the things that we're going to do with them off the field as well, and the
Awesome.
conversation that we're going to have with them. So
Awesome. Troy, appreciate it, man. It's been a lot of fun. Glad we got to connect, and I'm sure we'll cross paths. Hopefully this summer somewhere.
Absolutely, Patrick. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.